Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 923 for the 14th of June, 2026. Richard Saunders coming to you from Buffalo, New York. Well, I'll be buffaloed. I'm with Adrienne Hill.
Hey, how you doing, Richard? Are you tired yet?
I've been tired for the last week, I think. It's the old jet lag two-step. That's what I'm doing at the moment.
Not only a jet lag two-step, but an all-day activity-filled conference. It's so hard to keep the energy up. I am exhausted. Though Anthony Tracy King just helped us wake up this morning. With
a good vocal warm-up.
Yeah, exactly. And some good exercises.
So we've been practicing in the choir. More about that in the coming weeks. But coming up on this week's show, I interview Amanda Townley from the National Centre for Science Education. Adrienne's looking at my notes. Upside down. There we go.
I did. My brain is dead.
And I'm joined by Eugenie Scott for that interview. After that, we look at the recent TV appearances by skeptics in Australia, talking about Noah's Ark and talking to the dead. Ooh, there's two interesting topics.
It is very interesting. And I talk with Rodney Schmaltz, my Canadian compatriot. Is that the right word? Compatriot? Yeah. From Alberta, from Edmonton, from MacEwan University, who has been on the show a few times.
Yeah. And he was here. We met him the other day, or you know him, but I met him for the first time the other day. And you and I both sit down and have a chat with him. That was really fun. Right. In the book room.
That's right. It was in the book room. The book room is fabulous.
Full of books.
It's full of books, but also full of posters. And there were 3 students from universities that also gave a talk, and you're going to hear about that in the coming weeks as well.
Ooh, lots to look forward to. And we round off the show with the TROVE Archives, rounding off our series of segments looking at the time that Bob Steiner from the Bay Area went to Australia and posed as the fake psychic Steve Terbot. This week we're going to look at the aftermath in the newspapers, what the newspapers had to say about that whole affair. And Eugenie Scott spoke about that yesterday on the main stage.
Yes, indeed she did. And she gave a talk. Can I talk about the talk?
You can talk about the talk.
She gave a talk about Victoria's Secret. Yes. I thought that was really, really good.
About faith healing. That was very interesting.
It was. Yeah. It wasn't the Victoria's Secret most people think of.
No. Anyway, lots to look forward on this week's show. You and I have to run around the corner and probably grab a coffee if we can, and then run into the hall because today's sessions are just about, I think they've just started. While we do that, we hope you enjoy
the Skeptic Zone.
Australia's replete with dinosaurs. You see?
I'm sorry, I'm ignorant of that. I think of you as Ediacaran, the super early pre-Cambrian Ediacaran.
No, we had the raptors and sauropods.
Well, you got more than just the early stuff.
Australia's an amazing place. I'm here in beautiful downtown Berkeley, California, at free advertising here, Saul's Restaurant and Delicatessen. I just had an adult hot dog. Amanda Townley from the National Centre for Science Education. I had an adult hot dog. It means I'm an adult now.
It absolutely means that you're an adult. And I'm glad you distinguished between the child's version that was also on the menu.
You know, I didn't even notice that.
They have to set them apart, so you definitely made the right choice.
Now, it's been my habit over the last, I hate to say it, nearly 20 years.
Maybe 30.
Eugenie Scott sitting across the table. No, but I've been coming to interview people from the National Centre for Science Education for a good almost 20 years, I'm sure. At least. Longer. And now I'm interviewing you, Amanda.
Well, I'm excited to be a part of that journey.
How long now have you been involved with the centre?
So I've been executive director of the center for 2.5 years, but my story with NCSE actually goes back 20 years as well. So I was a classroom teacher. I was a student who was becoming a teacher in the early 2000s, and I found NCSE when I was going through my own struggles with evolution and creationism, both personally, growing up in a young earth creationist Southern Baptist ministry family, and becoming an evolutionary biologist, and then also teaching in Alabama and Georgia in the U.S.
Oh, the hotbed.
In the hotbed, and that's where my connection with NCSE started, and then I had the absolute pleasure of getting to know people and work with people over the course of 20 years, and ended up writing some papers with Glenn Branch and did presentations with Ann Reed, and Jeannie and I have actually met in passing several times long before I took on this position. So it's very much a part of my story as much as I get to be a part of its story.
Now, I don't hesitate to say the National Center for Science Education has evolved somewhat over the years.
Absolutely.
How do you think it's changed, and particularly when you came on board, what sort of direction are you steering it in?
Well, one of the things that we have to do is always be responsive to the fact that challenges to evolution and other science topics are also evolving. And
Touché.
And a lot of what we've seen is as they have run up against these issues, so as Jeannie has spelled out for many years, we started with banning, we got to blunting, we got to balancing. Well, I've added the fourth B, which is backsliding, because now under current administration, we're seeing a lot of the challenges that we thought were legally put to bed. So we're seeing the use of creationism language, of intelligent design language, when for almost 20 years now, since Kitzmiller in 2005, they haven't been pushing in that same, with that same gusto that they're doing again now, because now they feel like the courts may be on their side. And so the biggest shift that I see is that where we're fighting is not in the courtroom yet, it's in the back channels. So rather than districts putting, or states putting mandates in their legislation, we're seeing school districts and regions that are doing it on the back side of things so that it's not coming up as a legal doctrine. And so instead of fighting a fire at the state level, often we're fighting 100 smaller woodland fires in different individual districts, or sometimes even individual schools. And so those are much harder to challenge in some ways, because you have to have somebody there that lets you know what's going on, and you have to be able to come in and very subtly work with individuals that are on the ground in order to challenge what's happening in the district. It's not always as easy as a cease and desist, or, I won't call it easy to go to court, but it's not the same as being able to go to court and have something become federal precedent.
It's hard for people in Australia to understand. And I've been there, and to Georgia, for example, and I took a drive down out of Atlanta through the countryside, and it's hard to describe the shock. Well, I don't know if shock's the right word. The amazement I had with driving down the freeway, and there were giant billboards after giant billboards, all religious, all Jesus saves, all Waffle House. Well,
yes, that is actually very on brand, and a large part of that, what people often don't understand with religiosity, is that the United States, in the South especially, has an evangelical Christian tradition, and that evangelical tradition is largely evangelical and some version of young earth. There's a lot of different flavors to speak of. But when you're talking about an evangelical church system, it flips the script. It's not I go to church, I'm a part of church. It's God and church is me. And so you're taught from a very young age that you're not just responsible for your soul, you're responsible for everyone's souls.
Wow.
There is this idea that you have to give your testimony, and that your life and your interactions with people are your testimony, and that your representation, you're a physical representation, a human representation of godliness. And so, for example, a teacher in the South may say, well, I'm not teaching evolution because I don't believe in it. But it's not that they don't believe in it. It's also the fact that they believe that if they teach evolution to their students and cause their students to question their faith, that they have sacrificed those students' souls. And so it's a much heavier thing than just this hat that I take on and put off, like with my jobs and other things that I happen to do. And so that is a majority of the South falls under evangelical Christianity. And a lot of the work that I did because of growing up in that, because of my upbringing and because of, fighting those battles on the ground in the South, looked at how worldviews have that impact. And we talk about things like race and gender identities, right? And, we don't challenge someone because it's not appropriate to challenge someone or call someone out in certain ways about things that are an identity construct because it's a deeper part of them. It's more nuanced is what I'm trying to say. And often we don't think of the fact that in some religious traditions, religiosity is an identity construct. So it's a lot deeper. It's not something they can just set aside.
Yeah, we see that in prominent religions all over the world, really. And I'm not surprised it's like that. But again, I'm just saying this for the sake of people, my Australian listeners. The American listeners, I think, would understand what you're saying. But my Australian listeners, it would come as, I'll use the word shock. I mean, when you're there and you realize how pervasive, and it's not like it's separated. You're right. It's part of the whole package, isn't it?
It really is. It's something that cannot be easily divorced from the habits of daily life in those communities because everything is tied to church. I've said this frequently. If you play sports, they're church sponsored. If you go to school, often pre-K is church sponsored. We don't have the same programs widespread in the rural South especially. So the church is there to provide for everything. If the doors are open to the church, you're there because that is your church family. That is your community. That is who takes care of who. That is somebody passed away and the whole church collective comes and provides meals and cleans the house. Yeah. And so it's just a very deeply ingrained part of things. It's funny because in 1996 when the World Olympics were hosted in Atlanta, they actually created a guidebook for visiting athletes to understand the complexities of the American South and how to navigate things and safely move about and kind of explaining some of these phenomena because it is such a big deal and it's something researchers have deemed significance of place.
Okay.
I've got a copy of that book somewhere, by the way. It's quite hilarious.
It's very similar, actually, to what very devout Muslims feel. You'll hear very devout Muslims talk about how the idea of setting your faith aside to consider something just is incomprehensible. It's just, they can't, what do you mean, set my faith aside so I can do this or do that? Study a particular subject or go out and behave in a certain way, go dancing or whatever their particular view is. It's sort of like saying, okay, so I'll cut off the left side of my body. You just can't function because your personal identity has absorbed your Muslim faith. And I don't think most Americans appreciate how for a certain subset of Protestant Christian fundamentalists, evangelicals, that is also the case. Not all, you and I both know, because we deal with religion a lot, that there's this huge variety within American Christianity of beliefs. And, the more people you talk to, the more you study it, the more you find that there is such a range from this, my religion is part of my identity, I can't possibly set it aside because every waking breath that I take, I'm thinking about God and God is moving through me, etc., to, yeah, great, okay, we'll go to church and we'll have an Easter egg hunt. And they all would consider themselves good Christians. So it's one size does not fit all.
This is very true. Well, let's look forward to the future because we can't look back to the future. we can try. How do you see the next, couple of years looking for the centre? And of course, you're always after like-minded people to pitch in, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. Everything that we do is supported by individuals who are passionate about the work that we do as much as we are passionate about the work that we do. We do not receive federal funds. We do not receive any kind of large-scale grants. So it's literally just everything from people who give according to what they're capable of giving. We have memberships now, which that's something that's relatively new.
There's one of them on the motorbike going past.
We need to flag him down. We have memberships, and even that small donation to become a member, which gives you access to webinars, which helps you stay in the know about the things that we're doing. There's merchandise that we have, and all of the funds.
I just saw a wonderful cup you're just producing.
Yes.
And here it is. Jeannie's producing it, and I'm absolutely wrapped in it. It's a silicone flexible mug. It's a pint, and it's good for hot and cold beverages.
Yes, it is.
It looks fantastic. And it's as light as a feather, and it squashes down for packing. What more could you want?
And it's sustainable and ethically sourced, so you really can't get any better than that.
No home is complete now without this.
Exactly, and it supports science education, and it supports that fight. One of the things right now we have, especially in the U.S., is that science is under attack. There's no polite way to say that. There's no way to gloss it over. Science is under attack. Education is also grossly under attack. And therefore, science education is in a set of crosshairs that's coming from multiple directions. One of the great things about NCSC is we've had the ability to create a new program for back channel work where we have our work that's in advocacy, we have our policy level work, we have our research wing, and we have our teacher support. But now we're also bridging gaps. And so we're working with a variety of organizations that, while they're not teacher facing exactly, while they're not legal or policy facing exactly, we are getting into these side spaces that directly impact policy, that directly impact classrooms. So whether that be the national group that is all of the state science leaders from every state in the country, where they collectively gather and help plan policy and make decisions, we're now a trusted advisor, and we're providing guidance for a lot of these challenges that we're seeing. Whether it's the national academies here in the United States, we're now a part of collectives working with the national academies, guiding some of those processes that help support science education. And then, of course, being available to teachers, being connected with conference groups and other advocacy groups. Because honestly, there's plenty of trouble out there for all of us to cause and get into, but collectively we're stronger. And so the more people that we have that are supporting, whether it's joining as a member, whether it's supporting as one of our donors through a gift, whether it's being on our mailing list so that if we have an issue we can call upon someone, or sharing like you do in interviewing me and being able to share the work of the NCSE, every last thing helps. Because it may be something as simple as speaking into the wind if it's one of us, but if our collective voices come together, then it just amplifies greater and greater and greater. And I can say this is an organization that now, almost 50 years since Jeannie started this incredible fight, we're stronger than we've ever been, and we're making waves that are getting people's attention.
It's really good to know. And how can people find out more? What's the website to visit?
That is ncse.ngo. Here in the United States. There's also a website newsletter they can sign up there. So everything, one-stop shop, merchandise, newsletter, more information. Sign up for the Monitor if you're interested in the policy side of things. Sign up for NCSC Teach if you're interested in the education side of things. And as always, other than membership, it's completely free and available to the public.
Well, I'll add a link to that in the show notes. Eugenie Scott and Amanda Townley, a great pleasure once again to be here in Berkeley, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Wonderful to meet you.
G'day, Dr. Carl here, letting you know that I will be appearing at NotaCon 2026 from July 23rd to the 25th at the Sydney Masonic Centre. What is a NotaCon? Well, it's not a convention, but it sort of-ish, kinda. It's an interactive festival of ideas and games and audience participation by the Australian Skeptics and the whole crew from the Skeptics Guide to the Universe, which is the #1 skeptical podcast from the USA. The tickets are selling fast, with some types having already sold out. So jump onto notacon.com or skeptics.com.au to find out more and book your place while you still can. Bring your brain, bring your mates, and I'll see you there. Peace, love, mung beans. Bye.
story that appears on the Australian Skeptics webpage at skeptics.com.au about the recent TV appearances of myself and President of Australian Skeptics, Jessica Singer. The item is called Skeptics on TV. Richard Saunders reports on Australian Skeptics TV appearances. In early June 2026, the Australian television program A Current Affair contacted Australian Skeptics wanting our opinion on two very different topics, talking to the dead and Noah's Ark. This led to Skeptics President Jessica Singer and me being interviewed for broadcast. Jessica took on Noah's Ark, while I commented on Dolly Adamson, who claims to chat with the departed. Noah's Ark again, and again, and again, and again. We wish this overgrown mythical dinghy would sink and stay sunk. But every few years the same old tired and debunked story resurfaces. Has Noah's Ark been found? Short answer, no. Longer answer is that a site in modern-day Turkey, known as the Darupana Formation, has been flagged for about 60 years as the petrified remains of Noah's Ark. The formation itself resembles the vague outline of a boat, but is in fact a geological formation known as a syncline, formed by the natural folding of strata. Although of interest to geologists, several creation geologists, including Dr. Andrew Snelling and Dr. John Morris, have investigated the site and concluded it is completely natural. Still, this does not deter the believers. Then again, nothing short of God himself telling them to knock it off would stop them, and maybe not even then. Australian Bill Crabtree, who thinks the world is 6,000 years old and who is convinced the site is the real deal, employs the any day now trope by saying,
I personally think the evidence is going to build stronger and stronger.
It never does. And even if the formation was that of a boat, who's to say it's Noah's Ark? As Jessica Singer asked during the segment,
what evidence are they going to bring? Are there registration papers? Is there a name carved on the side?
Although creationists have flogged this story repeatedly, it sinks into obscurity, only to float to the surface once in a while like a bloated, rotten carcass, full of forlorn hope. Its only real purpose in the media seems to be that of a crazy story of the week filler. Messages from dead air. My appearance on A Current Affair was to comment on the claims by one Dolly Adamson from an outfit called Kyneton Paranormal in Victoria. Dolly uses a spirit box, nothing more than a hacked and long since debunked radio that continuously skips around the AM frequencies to seem to get messages from the dead. I have seen and heard this all before from a recent contender for the Bent Spoon Award, one Cale O'Donnell, who is one of many claiming to be Australia's #1 medium, and who uses the same shtick. However, in the case of Adamson, the dead often include the famous and the infamous, with the likes of Harold Holt, Princess Di, Heath Ledger, Joan of Arc and Ned Kelly. How thrilling it must be for the dead to line up and talk to her on her broken radio. What sets Dolly apart from some other operators is her claim to get messages from murdered children, including the Beaumont children from 1966. She even claims to get messages from the alleged killers of these children. The words pathetic and exploitative seem woefully inadequate. As I say on the segment,
there's an old saying in the skeptical business, the ghosts don't talk, but money does.
Dolly Adamson labelled A Current Affair jealous deadbeats, and I imagine Australian skeptics will suffer the same fate. Maybe the late Barry Williams, former editor of the Skeptic magazine, together with James Randi and Harry Houdini, can blow her a raspberry down the line to her ridiculous radio. Dolly has already been nominated 3 times for this year's Bent Spoon Award. A Current Affair has published both these stories on YouTube, and you can view them on the links I will provide in this week's show notes. Thank you to A Current Affair for reaching out to Australian skeptics.
Clean up on aisles 86 and 99. Muffin bucket, please. Aisles 86 and 99.
Hey, Adrienne.
Hey, Susan. Out for some shopping, eh?
That's right. I'm stocking up on real, imitation, natural, no GMO, gluten-free Australian maple syrup made from gum trees.
Real emit what? Gum trees? That sounds awful.
No, it's really good. 12 times pancake eating champion Richard Saunders says it's the best, and 7 out of 10 koalas agree.
Koalas? What? And people in Australia eat this stuff?
You bet. Look, there's Kate over there by the health food and melatonin section. She's Australian. She'll know for sure. Hey, Kate.
Hello?
Kate.
Oh, hi gang. Out for some shopping, eh?
Hey, Kate. We need your advice. Is real imitation, natural, no GMO, gluten-free Australian maple syrup made from gum trees as good as real maple syrup from Canada?
Canada makes maple syrup?
Yes, it's the best. It's made from maple trees.
What? Not from gum trees?
This is getting crazy. Oh, there's Laura over there, near the pancake aisle. She'll know for sure. Hey, Laura!
Hello, Adrienne. And Susan and Kate. Out for some shopping, eh?
Yes, and I really want to buy that real imitation, natural, no GMO, gluten-free Australian maple syrup made from gum trees. But Adrienne is skeptical.
I don't blame her.
Oh, come on, it's great. My dog loves it.
Oh, and Susan says that 12 times pancake eating champion Richard Saunders says it's the best.
And you listen to him? That's got to be a logical fallacy.
A logical fallacy? Are you sure?
It might be. I wonder.
If only we had a way of finding out. I said, if only we had a way of finding out.
Where is the skeptical fairy godmother angel from the internet?
I don't know. I sent her the script and recording time. Skeptical fairy! Hello?
It's okay. I've booked her stunt double. If only we had a way of finding out.
What is going on? Hello, everyone.
Oh my! It's the skeptical is that you, Kat?
Yes, I'm in training. Now, what do you want to know?
Okay, what can you tell us about the real imitation, natural, no GMO, gluten-free Australian maple syrup made from gum trees being endorsed by Richard Saunders? Because the whole thing sounds like a logical fallacy.
What? Is that a joke?
Well, we're trying.
I think you better ask the real skeptical fairy godmother angel from the internet.
I would, but she's totally undependable ever since she was inducted into the Tooth Fairy Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that Golden Molar Award really went to her head. Or maybe it came out of her head. What do we do now?
Come to think of it, I kind of remember hearing on the Skeptic Zone podcast something about a YouTube page which explains 40 different logical fallacies.
Oh yeah, I remember now. There's a link to it on the Skeptic Zone homepage at skepticzone.tv. Let me see. Oh, here it is. tinyurl.com/logicalzone.
tinyurl.com/logicalzone. Ah, yes. I had seen that. It stars Michelle Biggersmar. Michelle is also the Skeptical Fairy's press and publicity agent.
So, maybe we don't really need the real skeptical fairy godmother angel from the internet after all.
Well, we did outgrow the tooth fairy.
And I need the job.
Right. But the real fairy is pretty good at telling us about skeptical events and resources. At least when she shows up.
Oh, right. I guess we do need her after all.
Come on, everyone. There's a bar just around the corner with real Canadian maple syrup beer.
Perfect. Beautiful. Love it.
Great, let's go. Yes, let's go. I'm so happy.
You can count on Adrienne with Adrienne Hill.
Hello, everyone. This is Adrienne Hill. I'm in the book room at CSiCON. I'm having so much fun meeting so many people. And with me right now is Rodney Schmaltz. I think listeners might know him.
It is a pleasure to be back.
I'm so glad to see you. And this time we are, not being in Edmonton, we are in Buffalo, New York. And I heard you last Friday on the Skeptical Help Bar with Kenny Biddle, and you have recently had a study published. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
It was a study looking at infrasound, and infrasound is a low-frequency sound below 20 hertz. It's a sound that we can't consciously hear, but we can feel it. And there's a little bit of a history behind some of the research we've done. We originally started some research in a commercial haunted house called Edmonton. And what we did is we had...
I have to interrupt.
Yes, please do.
Edmonton?
Edmonton.
Not Edmonton.
No, it is called Edmonton. And it's amazing. It's Hollywood-level special effects. They have hundreds of actors during the haunt, as they call it. But we did it in the off hours. What we did is we built some infrasound speakers and we put it in Edmonton, and we had people go through, and we wanted to see if it impacted their responses to fear. The research was built on some work by Chris French, who had the Haunt Project. He had people come into a room that was dimly lit, he had electromagnetic frequencies and infrasound, and he wanted to see if people reported anomalous experiences, anything weird. And what he found was that the infrasound made no difference, but expectation or personality seemed to. So we wondered if maybe what you need is some sort of fearful stimuli. And that's why we did it in Edmonton, a very scary place. Now, we had some equipment issues, but we did find that people who were exposed to infrasound went through faster. That brings us to this study. We brought it into the lab, and we had people listen to music that was relaxing or music that was kind of spooky. Not so much music as more ambient background noise you'd hear in a horror movie. And they were exposed to infrasound or not. And what we found was that when people were exposed to infrasound, regardless of whether the music was scary or whether it was relaxing, their cortisol levels went up. And cortisol is a hormone associated with stress. On top of that, the ratings of the music went down in the sense that they were rated as more sad, regardless of what they were listening to. People were less interested in the music, and general levels of irritation went up as well. The reason that's important for what we do in the more skeptical area is that infrasound can be caused by things like old HVAC systems, low rumbling pipes, old boilers, which is typical of what you find in a haunting. So this could explain a small piece of the puzzle in that when people report a haunting experience, what they might actually be exposed to is infrasound, and then they're misattributing it to a more paranormal explanation.
And there were some interesting headlines you got as a result of this publication. Can you explain those or tell us what they were?
Right. To be clear, what we found is exposure to infrasound raises cortisol levels, and it changed evaluations of the music, and it relates to hauntings. But what the headlines have said are things like, Alberta psychologists disprove ghosts, which is not what we did. What we did is perhaps show a small piece of the puzzle to help explain the experience in some hauntings, but we have not disproven ghosts. So, and in fairness to the reporters, the articles were usually pretty good, but the headlines were fairly outrageous.
So a lot of clickbait.
There was a lot of clickbait, for sure.
So I'm going to muscle in on this interview. Rodney, what a pleasure it is to meet you.
Yes, it's a pleasure to meet you as well.
So yes, and we met last night for the first time, but I've heard you on the Skeptic Zone.
Yes.
Quite a lot.
It has been a pleasure to have Adrienne and Kat join us on ghost hunts, and they've also given several guest lectures in my course on scientific skepticism.
The thing I love about their interviews and their reports from your tours is the mental picture they paint.
Yes.
Creeping around rooms and here and you hear noises and stuff like that.
The last one we did was at Freemasons Hall in Edmonton, and there was an old boiler, and every once in a while it would just go bang. And at one point, the students actually ran out.
Really?
It was fantastic, even though they know that it's very unlikely that there's ghosts, and that's really what we talk about in the course. They still were afraid and ran out. It was great.
And that boiler I heard up on the 4th floor, and it scared me too. And I knew there was an explanation for it. I didn't know it was the boiler at the time, but we got that on the recording for the show. I just wanted to go back to the infrasound, because you do a demonstration to the students that is absolutely mind-blowing in my opinion. It's so easy to do and yet so impactful. Can you describe it?
Sure. Measuring infrasound is hard. You need some mics that are quite expensive, but if you want to see if there's some infrasound there, all you have to do is light a match or get a lighter, and if the flame bends a bit in the middle, or if the flame starts to turn a little bit, there's a good sign then that there's some infrasound. So you don't know how much, but especially if it's turning, there's probably a good chance that there's a lot.
Yeah, there was quite a lot when you did it for us when we were in Concordia College. That's when I saw you do it.
Yeah, and that was in the basement, which is fairly typical of where you found infrasound, but it was a dramatic effect. The flame really did bend in the middle, and there was no breeze at all.
Or it could be ghosts.
It could be ghosts. That could also be it. Actually, I've had questions like that. Well, what if the ghosts are producing the infrasound? It's like, well, what would be the mechanism that would allow them to do that? And we're beside a boiler that we know produces it. So I think the better explanation would be old boiler, not ghostly.
Well, they're old-fashioned
bass.
ghosts. You see, they don't rely on the broken radio, the spirit box.
That's right. That's right.
That would be an interesting one to try. How many AM stations are there in Edmonton? Do you know?
Quite a few.
Yeah?
Yeah.
The spirit box would probably work in Edmonton.
Absolutely. It would for sure.
Yeah. I want to get one.
I tried to build one.
Really?
But yeah, so I bought a very old radio that was broken. I was playing with it to try to build my own spirit box, but no luck yet. So I may have to break down and buy a spirit box, but I hate to give any money to the people selling these things.
Well, I mean, I go to Mind Body Wallet every year, and sometimes I have to pay for that, but I just consider it to be research,
Yeah,
it's
for
okay.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining me again, and it's great seeing you here in Buffalo instead of Edmonton. It's a lot warmer here.
It is absolutely that, and I will see you in October for yet another ghost hunt.
Looking forward to it. Signing off, I guess. I haven't signed off yet. And this is Adrienne Hill signing off from Buffalo, New York. CSiCON 2026, 50th anniversary.
This is Susan Gerbic from Psychics Explained. That's the YouTube channel where we discuss and analyze in great depth all those people who say that they can speak to the dead, all those readings, how they look like they're actually communicating with people. Why do people fall for this? There's a reason. It's much more complicated than you would think. Come to my channel, watch our videos. We would love to have you become part of our conversation. Just visit us on YouTube at Psychics Explained or Psychic Sex Planed on YouTube.
Now it's time once again to go back to the pages of newspapers, and this time, once again, we're heading for the Skeptic magazine, because in there we have a reprint from the Australian newspaper, and this is all to do with the Steve Terbot, Bob Steiner hoax we've been covering over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Now, last week we read Philip Adams' column, deriding the fact that this so-called psychic would be visiting Australia. And this week we're going to be reading the column he wrote after it was all exposed as a hoax. And this comes from the Australian newspaper. It says here from June 1984, but I don't have the exact date. I'll see if I can find out at some stage, but anyway. And this is titled, "The Hoax That Had Australia Really Fooled." On May 5th, this column mounted an unusually strident, almost hysterical attack on psychics in general, and a Steve Terbot in particular. Although he'd yet to arrive in Australia, I branded him, quote, "a fraud and a charlatan," end quote, and invited him to sue me for libel. It was the beginning of an elaborate and somewhat instructive hoax. In 1980, the inimitable Dick Smith, a young lawyer called Mark Plummer, and I arranged a tour of Australian universities by James Randi, a middle-aged man who spends quite a lot of time in straitjackets dangling upside down from helicopters over Niagara Falls. He's also an advisor to CSiCON, the Take a Deep Breath Committee for the Skeptical Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, which is a body of prominent scientists who subject spoonbenders, mind readers, faith healers, astrologers and such like to objective scrutiny. The committee has found that Randi, a professional magician and escapologist, is perhaps their most valued member. For although scientists are trained observers, they're not used to dealing with charlatanism in experiments. Randi, with his practiced eye, can both detect and repeat the conjuring tricks of a Uri Geller. Randi became Geller's nemesis, destroying his preposterous reputation with a devastating book. Since its publication, the Israeli metal bender has been strangely silent, skulking in the multi-million-dollar mansion provided by the wife of a South American president who still insists Uri Geller is God. And there are people today, even today, who still insist that Uri Geller was the real thing. We brought James to Australia to antagonize local psychics who were reaching plague proportions. Dick, Richard Carlton, and I offered a big cash prize to anyone who could demonstrate any psychic ability of any sort under anything approaching test conditions. We joined with Mike Willisey in examining Australia's top water diviners in a series of tests refereed by ministers of religion, using protocols that the diviners had enthusiastically embraced. Although the experiments couldn't have made it easier for those wavers of willow twigs and wire, they failed utterly and miserably, just as they failed to detect which of 5 cardboard boxes contained a thumping great gold ingot. It was the same with a variety of telepaths, spoonbenders and such like, with the inimitable Randi keeping a fatherly eye on them. They all failed. Yet when Randi would duplicate, and often improve on, Geller's conjuring on various university campuses, there were always people in the audience who cried out, "You are a psychic!" According to them, he was a genuine psychic who was pretending to be a magician. The climax of the tour came when Don Lane, a devotee of cold reader Doris Stokes, became extremely agitated in an interview and threw James Randi off the set with a loud cry of, "Piss off!" After the tour, Mark, Dick and I formed the Australian Skeptics, being the Antipodean branch of CSiCON. Concerned by the escalating interest in paranormal paranonsense, we decided to arrange a second tour. But this time, we'd import a pseudo-psychic of our own, so as to dramatize the insatiable silliness of a public which will accept anything without analysis, without evidence. In fact, the sillier the psychic claim, the more ardent the response. Hence my table-thumping tirade about Steve Terbot, a man with a rather silly name. My attack was intended to legitimize Terbot in the eyes of the true believers. It involved letting the Australian's editor, Les Hollins, into a secret, shared at the time by only 4 of us. The article lampooned Turbo's alleged abilities and at the same time advertised his forthcoming appearances at various halls. On Monday morning, before we'd had a chance to warn our fellow skeptic Darren Hinch, he was using my column as the basis for his radio program, heaping more scorn on poor Mr. Terbot and thus adding to his underdog status in the ears of the true believers. It was only when Darren came off air he was let into the secret. Meanwhile, we'd been distributing a dossier on Terbot around psychic circles in which he made the claim that ESP was learnable. This idea was fashionable among psychic groups who found it an excellent method of gaining new recruits and maximizing income. As well, Terbot was endorsed by an academic, the fictitious Jane Curtain, Ph.D. You see, it's also fashionable for psychics to claim at least one academic as having endorsed them in their powers after rigorous scientific testing. Needless to say, none of Australia's believers asked for details of Curtain's academic background or the whereabouts of her laboratory. The third leg of the claim involved psychic sex, with Terbot claiming a link between intercourse and ectoplasm. At least one Australian psychic tells women that sex with him is necessary for psychic development, and we felt psychic sex would ensure wide media coverage. Meanwhile, friends in America had provided an address and phone number for Terbot, just in case anybody rang to check. I'd contacted Peter Feynman at GTV, suggesting the Bert Newton Tonight Show would be an ideal vehicle for our little charade. Bert, of course, would have been told, but the need for total secrecy was stressed. Meanwhile, we'd organised meetings at Monash and Melbourne universities, and the phone was running hot with believers. If the awful Adams and the horrible Hinch had attacked Mr. Terbot, then he must be the real thing. Steve Terbot arrived at Tullamarine on Wednesday, May 9. Custom officials were somewhat surprised by the contents of his luggage, which included 50 packs of playing cards and boxes of nails. He was then whisked off to a secret rendezvous with the subcommittee, Darren Hinch and Peter Feynman, for a full briefing and discussion. The next day, Terbot had a mixed reception at Monash, with much healthy scepticism expressed by the audience. However, after performing a few telepathic tricks, the students were prepared to concede his psychic gifts, as was the audience of Bert's show a few hours later. After a few more card tricks and a vociferous face-to-face attack by Darren Hinch, Australia had decided to believe in Steve. Bert announced a cash challenge from Dick Smith, $100,000, with Hinch and me kicking in another $20,000. Steve, the turbocharged psychic, had only to bend a little metal and he could return to San Francisco with a suitcase full of playing cards, nails, and cash. Meanwhile, prominent local believers like Dr. Charles Osborne, the Melbourne academic who claims to have over 40 infant Uri Gellers in his stable, kids who can bend iron bars with their brainwaves, rang Terbot to warn him about the Australian skeptics. Devious people who would stop at nothing. Steve was very grateful for the advice. Now the media attention on Terbot was hotting up, and the audiences at his meetings were growing in size and enthusiasm. Thus, around a third of the audience at the theatre in Ringwood raised their hands for a, quote, private reading, end quote, with Terbot at $25 a head. He could have collected $2,500 in just a few days. With his skill and experience at closed readings, he'd had satisfied most of them, especially once his accomplices had checked phone books, electoral rolls and other sources for information which could be fed back to his subjects or victims. Nowadays, of course, that's mostly done via Facebook. Steve tells the story of a woman who apologised for being unable to attend his next meeting. "You see, I'm going to Sydney." "I know," said Steve solemnly. "You know?" said the woman in astonishment. "Yes," said Steve. "I'm going to see my son," said the woman breathlessly. "I know," said Steve, nodding. She was utterly astonished and deeply impressed. You can imagine the way she described the encounter in the days and weeks ahead. "I met this psychic and he knew I was going to Sydney to see Fred before I even told him." In the deep waters of psychic belief, the fish will bite at anything. Moreover, they form cues to climb on the hook. The desire of people to believe in the paranormal is both pathetic and poignant. I've got a small collection of rare recordings, the voices of Gandhi, Stalin, Florence Nightingale, Lord Alfred Tennyson, Sir Arthur Sullivan, Lenin, and Sarah Bernhardt. Though you can hear her through a fog of surface noise, her performance is electrifying and soaring, impassioned, so eloquent, which chills the spine. Bernhardt was, by all accounts, one of the more formidable and brilliant women. Yet Harry Houdini tells a sad story about the gullibility of this one-legged star. They were riding through London in an open carriage, and he'd been telling her about his latest exposé of psychic frauds and of his arguments with the curiously naive Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. "Yes, Harry," she said quietly, "but please give me back my leg." As I was overseas, I missed the moment of revelation on the Bert Newton show when Steve Terbot turned out to be Bob Steiner, a skeptic from San Francisco, and an associate of CSiCON. The Nine Network's phones ran hot, and poor Darren took a bucketing from psychically inclined members of his radio audience. We skeptics had done a Trojan horse on the true believers, and they may never again dare to be as gullible. Oh, if only that was the case. Yet again, we've demonstrated that the tawdriest, silliest, and most banal conjuring tricks can convince too many people a mediocre magician is a magus or even a messiah. This results in the most sinister form of psychic surgery, where people allow themselves to be lobotomized of logic. Remember that Geller finished up claiming to be an emissary from outer space, the ambassador of a superior civilization a few light years away. Remember how Jim Jones used tawdry conjuring tricks to convince his congregation he was the savior, leading them to the Garden of Eden that became their graveyard. All in all, a highly successful hoax that may have hexed the psychic parasites who so ingenuously practiced the art of levitating the wallets of the innocent and the ailing. Thank you, Bert. Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Bob. And there we go. I think we round off the whole story of Steve Terbot, Bob Steiner from 1984, with that piece by Philip Adams in the Australian newspaper, dating from June 1984, after the exposé. Of course, it would be a lot harder to do a similar thing these days because people can look up people on the internet easily, facial recognition, even Trove and other archives to see what's happened or who these people are or were. But I must say, to this very day, people from the United States especially are still coming out to Australia many times a year to do the same sort of, let's say, performance. But you too can find out about psychic performances and all sorts of things when you go to Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, or in this case, in the pages of the Skeptic magazine at skeptics.com.au, because when you go there and you do a search, you never know what skullduggery you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. We're just ducked out again to do... No, we haven't. We're lying, folks. We're doing this in one take. I know, seeing how see how the sausage is made. You know, this is it. Did you enjoy this week's show, Adrienne?
Oh, I loved it. Psychic Penny's here, and she...
I've never met Psychic Penny in person. I don't think so. Where did Adrienne go? This is ridiculous.
Psychic Penny predicts that everybody enjoyed the show.
Oh, another correct prediction from Psychic Penny. Absolutely wonderful. Look, Psychic Penny, yes, what? Yes?
Adrienne's back.
Oh, hello.
So there was somebody who was in the lineup, and my husband was talking to them and said, I'm Greg Hill. And then they said, he said, my wife Adrienne is here. And they went, Adrienne Hill? You mean Psychic Penny? And then they said that I needed to have Psychic Penny on my name tag, but I didn't. But if you flip the little package, the name tag package over, there's a little pocket. They gave me an American penny to represent my name.
Psychic Penny.
Well, there's my Psychic Penny.
I see it. That's very clever. Well, coming up in the next few weeks, more interviews from CSiCON, where we are, the 50th anniversary in Buffalo, New York. And, who knows what else? Who knows? Not even Psychic Penny.
No, well, if she did try to make a prediction, my prediction would be it's wrong.
Well, and I predict that Psychic Penny would thank our subscribers, the people who contribute to the Skeptic Zone via PayPal, Patreon, or Buy Me a Coffee. And I think she'd also predict that we should just go and crash in our beds because we're jet lagged. No, I'm jet lagged. You're okay.
Yeah, I only have a 2-hour time difference.
I'm
it's
on
not too bad.
Well, 11 or 12 for me.
It's the next day, basically. Or no you went into the past.
I went back to the future, and then I went forward into the past, and then I woke up and... Anyway, for this week, thank you for this week. This is Richard Saunders, Psychic Penny and Adrienne signing off from...
Buffalo,
New
York.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for episodes and show notes with links going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, X, TikTok and YouTube by clicking the links at our homepage, together with links to support the show financially via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of the Skeptic Zone podcast or any other skeptical organisation.
Yes, it's the bit after the show, at the end of the music after the show. I'm with Psychic Penny, and Psychic Penny, we have a Squaring the Strange die from Squaring the Strange.
It is lovely, and it has green dots on it. I'm very impressed.
Now, I know you're psychic, but I want you to turn off your psychic powers for now, just in case.
It's impossible. They're all the time.
You're going to roll this die 3 times, then a fourth for why not, what the hell. Now, everybody guess at home. It's a 6-sided die. I'm going to guess 6.
I'm going to guess Squaring the Strange, which I guess is 1.
All right, let's go. Well, we split the difference. It's 3. So we're both right.
That's one way to look at it.
You giggle like Adrienne. Okay, the next roll, I'm going to predict 5.
I am going to predict 6.
It's not a very psychic die, is it?
No, it split the difference again.
It's 4.
So we're both right.
4. We're both right again. Incredible. I'm going to predict 4 again.
I'm going back to Squaring the Strange because I like Celestia and Ben.
1. Okay, here we go. It's a 6. I blame the die. Okay, last one. I'm going to predict a 3.
6.
3. You see? You see?
Richard is more psychic than Psychic Penny.
Thank you, Dice, for rolling a 3 for me. And thank you, Psychic Penny.
Always a pleasure, Richard.